Hey guys, Squintina here, and today I'm going to go over my Black Mage setup. So first, let's start with our general actions. As you can see, I've already placed everything. There is nothing missing. If you feel like something is missing, it is probably an action that automatically adjusts based on level, and if you are dragging the higher level version, which is what I'm using, it will change back for you, so don't worry, nothing is missing. But let's start with Limit Break. It's going to go on our double, as it does for every single job. And for Sprint, oh boy, having to say this for every video. Button configuration, macro 99 is on my right click. And that is my macro 99. I also have Bolt in it because I use it for PvP as well. But I don't actually keep it. If you wanted to keep it, what I would recommend is actually using a keyboard hotbar, maybe one that's shared across all jobs, and have it really big and visible there. So next are role actions. We're going to have Swift Cast in the same spot as it is for our healers and other magical ranged. And because of that, we're actually going to go directly to Triple Cast and put it right next to it. So that way you always remember, if I want to do instant stuff, it's right here. We're going to have Addle in the same place as all of our other party mitigation tools. And Surecast has got a defined spot for anti-knockback. So Lucid Dreaming. I know a few of you were thinking, Black Mages don't need Lucid Dreaming. And for the most part, you would be correct. For the most part. There are a few niche uses of it. For example, I was working on Relic, specifically the Realm Reborn one, and I had to do a lot of low-level dungeons as part of the book step, which I hate, and keeping Enochian on monsters that are dying so quickly is actually very annoying, and it was much easier to just use Lucid and use some of the other lesser used actions to actually get it done faster. So there are uses. Beyond that, there are guides about how to hyper-optimize very specific situations that happen in bosses where transposing into a Lucid might actually be more beneficial. It's extremely hyper-optimized. I'll put a link to it. It's not mine. I am not a Black Mage main, but I did have to do that research to make sure that this was actually needed. And if you are one of those really hyper-optimized Black Mages, you might want to keep Lucid Dreaming around. If not, I mean, it's your choice if you want to remove it and put something else in there. So next up, we're going to go straight to AoE. So I'm going to go my Expanded, that's left and right together. And I've already separated my AoEs into essentially the rotation, the lesser used because they're just not used frequently, and then the one lesser used not because it's not used frequently, but because you have to wait to be able to use it, right? So Sleep is going to go in the same place as Repose, that the healers have, to keep it the same if you have to use it, like in Baldesian Arsenal. And then for our main ones, we're going to have Flare up here, Freeze, and Thunder will go in the bottom. This is going to be a pattern. We'll see. So that leaves Blizzard 2, Fire 2, and Foul. You might be thinking Foul will go here. It won't, and I'll explain why in a second. Well, in a few seconds. Soon. Foul goes right here. And then Blizzard 2 and Fire 2 will go on the D-pad. The reason is because they're not really used in endgame content. The only time you'd really be using those would be in very low-level synced dungeons, which could happen, so that's why you need them. You don't want to be completely AoE-less, but they don't deserve to be on the main action buttons. It does, however, mean that if you are doing low-level stuff, it might feel very awkward, because you're going to be using the D-pad a lot. But such is life of a Black Mage, just is. Otherwise, the other solution would be to have, like, left and right be your... right and left be your main damage, and then left and right be your synced damage. But that means if you accidentally make a mistake during battle, you could end up regretting that decision. But of course, it's all up to you. So let's go into why I didn't put foul here. Typically, I try to put mobility on square, which for those of you who don't know is this location right here, and this location, and also that location. They're all square. For Black Mage it ends up a little bit different because you get a few extra mobilities through, fire and thunder if they proc, but there are 3 actual mobility tools. There's the really good one, Xenoglossy, which of course will get the best spot, which is this one. The also kind of cool, good one, but that is more in between pulls or in like forced boss waiting phase, right here, and then Scathe, which you probably would not be using very much in actual endgame content, at least I would hope not. Oftentimes it's better to actually clip your GCD than it is to use Scathe, but if you're doing, once again, relics where you have to do unsynced old dungeons, you might end up using this a lot more than you thought. A whole lot more. So it will be there, and that's why its spot is reserved, because it is mobility and it belongs there. It allows you to kind of move very quickly while you're grabbing things and killing them on the way. So let's go back to our abilities. Specifically, let's go back to our double, because we've got some extra rules that we still have to attend. Self buffs. Our primary self buff goes here. That's the same rule for most jobs. Our secondary self buff, if we don't have a secondary party mitigation, which we don't, goes right here. So that's where Mana Font is. Yay! And that's going to go really well with the things that end up here as well, you'll see. And Mana Ward is sort of an HP thing. It's the closest thing that they have to Second Wind, even though this one's preventative and not reactive. So it will go there. For our jumps, we have 2 jumps, right? And neither one are technically a jump up, but I will treat between the lines as a jump up. Atherial Manipulation, you might be thinking I'll put it here. I won't. I'll put it there. However, it's not going to be used too much. You might use it, you might not. It's really up to you. I will have a whole section on Atherial Manipulation right after we've gone through all of these. So that leaves our main GCDs, and still a whole lot of slots left. So with Black Mage, I've noticed that there are actually a lot of different rotations, more than I expected, and the main thing is that there usually is a brief blizzard phase and then a bigger fire phase. So we're going to start on the left side because we're going to move to the longer right side, and I do tend to favor the right side when it comes to things that are done repetitively. But I did say there was a pattern. Where Thunder 4 is, or Thunder 3 is on the other side. We're going to have Blizzard 3 here, and for the sake of having a similar thing, which is that it puts in 3 of its elements, Fire 3 will go in the same location. Blizzard 4, Fire 4. And so of course Fire must be by itself right here. And it is part of the rotation if you're trying to extend your fire, so it does belong on the right side. But for a little blizzard here, really isn't used very much, so once again, if you're doing low level content, you will need it. You'll hate that it's on the D-pad, it will be really uncomfortable, but hopefully you're not doing synced low level content all the time. Hopefully. You can pretty much choose any of these slots, it really won't matter once you see it, but let's move on. Despair and Foul. So I already have Foul here for when you're doing actual AoE, but Foul is also used when you're doing single target. Both of these are not used super often in the sense that you have to wait for the right time to use it, or to even be able to use it. And so that makes them great candidates for being GCDs on the double. Which is great for when you also want to use Mana Fawn, if you're willing to clip yourself. Or not, depending on what you did before. Sharpcast goes here. And then we've got Enochian. The reason I listed it twice, which I didn't always do that, is because once again, looking at the various rotations in the guides, which there were so many rotations, I really was not expecting that many. Enochian is sometimes used in Fire Phase and sometimes used in Ice Phase. So, I'm going to have one here and one there to kind of reduce how much you're switching from one side to the other when we can. And Transpose is here. Of course, you should try to minimize your transposes, but I have found that on the few times when Transpose is used, it's not uncommon for Lucid to be double weaved with it, and so it makes sense to have them on the same side. And so that places all of our actions, and it leaves, if you're using this particular setup, 3 possible macros. These should be for potions, so for example, this one could be your tincture or whatever else is going to be called in the future to boost yourself up, the one that's actually part of your rotation, your opener. And another one could be for an ether if you're trying to do an extra spare or flare or whatever it is you're doing. And then maybe if you're doing Palace of the Dead, you'll want one for an Echo Drops, because being in silence sucks. It really does. But that leaves 3 possible slots for macros. 4 if you're getting rid of one of the Enochians. 5 if you're getting rid of the Lucid Dreaming. And yeah, all of those could be used for Atherial Manipulation, your best friend. So as you can see, I am in a party, the Trusts. And currently, DPS is set to the default version that most people will have of Tank Healer DPS. That's actually not what I use, but a lot of people use it. So I will have macros available for both. I use DPS Healer Tank. And if I sort it, but you can use P-Sort as a macro, or you can go back to party members, sort, we'll make it this way. And the reason I do that is because, first of all, this is not the only DPS that exists. For Dragoon, it's very useful to have it this way, because that means if you have another melee in your party, they will be literally right under you, and that makes giving the eye very easy. And if you don't, and you don't trust your ranged, you can give it to the tank very easily, especially if you're in an alliance raid where people seem to be all over the place. So that's one of the reasons, and it really comes out pretty well for Black Mage as well, in the sense that if you're trying to manipulate into the inbox, right, you want to be at the boss. Typically, you don't want to either go to a tank or a melee. Some people just always go for a healer because they're just going to trust that the healer will do mechanics, because I guess healers tend to be safe. I mean, I know I am, but I don't know about other healers. But you do have choices in the sense that if you're doing down twice, that will be your first co-DPS. So if you have another melee, or a melee, because you're not another melee, that's great. You can just go into Atherial Manipulation, you're there. You can do up twice for a tank, whichever tank happens to be the last one. And then you can use your macros to reach the healers. And so I have 2 macros. One that I call 3, and one that I call healer. Let's open them up. And actually you can notice I have 2 of them, and that's because it will change. So for the two versions that I'm supporting, which is the default of tank, healer, DPS, and then the one I prefer of DPS, healer, tank, in a 4-man, the healer would always be party member 3. And that's what 3 is. It's party member 3. And it goes on the left side, the slightly lesser used side. But in 8-man, there are 2 types of 8-man. There's the Alliance version, where you have 1 tank, and 5 DPS, and 2 healers. And then there's the regular 8-man version of 2 tanks, 2 healers, and 4 DPS, right? And so, in the regular setup, that would mean that your guaranteed healer slot, the one that's always going to be a healer for both, will be slot number 4. Right, so this is for people using the default configuration. And for people using the configuration I'm using, it would be number 6. It would be guaranteed a healer. But if you have 2 healers, and one of them isn't as good at dodging as the other, and unfortunately that person is number 6, you can change that. Remember, you can go to party members, and you can drag people, reorder them. Just if you once again use sort, whether it's through this or a macro, it will get changed back. But yeah, if you don't like whoever's on your 6 or your 4, depending on which setup you're using, just switch them up. Yeah, that's it. Just like if you have 2 tanks and you are using the 2 up to get to the last tank and you don't like that tank and you prefer the other one, instead of going up 1 more, you can just reorder them, and that might be better. But you do have extra slots, especially if you make extra slots by removing Lucid or removing one of the Enochians based on whichever rotations you happen to prefer. Then you could have some extra Atherial Manipulation macros that you can use. Yeah. Alright, summary time. On our primary, on the right side, we've got Fire 4, Fire 3, Fire, Xenoglossy, Enochian, Shotcast, Transpose, and an Atherial Manipulation macro to your healer, to your guaranteed healer, which if you are using the default setup would be healer 4, and if you are using the setup that I use of DPS healer tank would be healer 6. This is for 8-man, your guaranteed healer in 8-man. On the left side, we've got Blizzard 4, Blizzard 3, Thunder 3, Umbra Soul, Enochian, Blizzard, and here is your guaranteed healer in a light party. I can speak, I swear. And this would be your number 3 healer in both setups. If you are using something completely different, you will have to adjust accordingly. In the Expanded, this will be repeated unless you actually set your Expanded to not need repetition. So I need to copy those over. You would have Flare, Freeze, Thunder 4, Scathe, Sleep, Foul, Fire 2, and Blizzard 2. And on your double, on the right side, you would have Between the Lines, Foul, Lucid Dreaming, Despair, Manafont, Addle, Surecast, and Ley Lines. And on the left, you would have Swiftcast, Atherial Manipulation, the regular version, Mana Ward, Triplecast, Limit Break, and 3 slots for potions. And that's that. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'm gonna have so much fun with Summoner. Yeah, so bye bye.